basically life before Erik was filled with school, a lot of school. I love school. I still do love school. I would go back and learn how to sew better if sewing school was a thing. Well, it is, but you know. Yeah, so my life before Erik was filled with lots of books. I love to read, still do. Lots of homework and lots of doing school, and then also just a lot of time spent with my family and friends, but a lot of family time, especially when I was younger. Yeah, so I went to a small private Christian high school, loved it. Went to a small private Christian school for my undergrad. I graduated with an English and Lit minor, but then, or English Lit major, sorry. But then when I went for my master's degree, I got my degree in teaching English for speakers of other languages. And while I was getting my degree, my master's degree, I was teaching full-time at UC Riverside. I was teaching international students English, and then I was taking classes at night. So like basically right before I met Erik, my life was insane the past couple of years before I met him. So what I would do is I would have to wake up super early because I lived in Orange County. I worked in Riverside County. Like all day I had a full schedule of teaching, and then I would go and get my master's at Biola University, which was in technically Los Angeles County. Then I would have to go back home to Orange County where I lived. So it was so insane. And if any of you guys are teachers or no teachers, that first year of teaching, the first couple of years are brutal. It was so hard, so intense. And so I really did not have much of a social life. I would go over, if I went over to my friend's house, I would probably end up like bringing work and like grading and stuff like that, or I would fall asleep. It was really crazy. But I always, so before I met Erik, I really thought my life would lead a different path. So I thought I would get married when I was 22, have my first kid, then I wanted kids at 25, 27, 29, and 31. Or just stop with 2, I wasn't sure. But definitely by the time I was 30, I wanted to be married, to have my own house, and to have 2 kids. And a career wasn't really, I didn't care about it, to be honest. Like I worked really hard, I graduated with like high honors and stuff like that. But I didn't really, all I really wanted my whole entire life, the only thing I've wanted was to be a mom. Like that was, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom forever. That's what my dream was, and of course came with that marriage. But I wasn't really like, I'm not a boy crazy person, didn't really date a ton or anything like that. And I didn't have time for the couple of years before I met Erik. But it was also really hard because I really wanted to be married because Erik and I met when I was 25, and I was, in my head, I was already supposed to have been married for 3 years, and I was supposed to have my kid then, you know. And so it was really hard to be not like meeting my goals, you know. So I felt really lonely, I felt really sad, and I really was not like meeting a bunch of people because just because, first of all, I'm very introverted. I do not like I don't like social things. I wasn't involved with people of my age at the church I was going to, and I was just exhausted from trying to work and go to school and living far away and commuting and stuff like that. So before Erik, my life was super crazy. I did go to Disneyland every Saturday morning with my best friend though, and we would go all the time, and it was great. But I was, a lot of time before Erik, like the immediate time, it was exhaustion. And then when I didn't feel exhausted, I felt sad and disappointed with where my life was because it wasn't what I really wanted in my heart, and that was hard.
So, life before Amy was pretty good. I was pretty typical bachelor guy. At the time of meeting her, I was living in, I believe Bellevue. I was living in Bellevue. When I lived in my small town of Bremerton until I was 23, and then I moved over to, or 21, sorry, I was 21, and I moved to the Seattle area because there's a lot more opportunities there for jobs and stuff. And so I spent a long time hanging out in that city, and when I moved over to Bellevue, things were getting different for me. I really started to sort of kind of long for, I guess, a marriage or a wife or something, I don't know. I was super heavily involved in my church. I had a lot of friends, and I hung out constantly with people. I lived with two other guys, Brandon and Daniel, and three of us hung out and did stuff all together. We watched movies. I'd go out, pretty much every weekend and just hang out with people and go to barbecues or bonfires or, swimming, whatever it was. You just kind of hung out and did stuff. And so that was a lot of my life at the time, is just being pretty social, hanging out with people, doing stuff at church. I worked, at the time I was working at T-Mobile. I spent probably on and off for 6 or 7 years between Verizon and T-Mobile. And so I was working there, I liked my job, it was great. I lived 10 minutes from work, which was awesome because I was able to cut through Bellevue College to go, if you're familiar with the area, I cut from one side of Bellevue College to the other to get to the T-Mobile campus. And even before that, I'd take the bus down, and it's like a 10-minute bus ride. So either way, I was not having to go very far for work, which was awesome. I could have even walked there. Honestly, I probably should have walked there, but I didn't. But yeah, so that before Amy, it was a good life. I was hanging out. I was the third wheel with a lot of people. My best friend, I honestly would go over to his house all the time and just hang out with him and his wife because there's nothing else for me to do, and it was fun. And so I spent a lot of time just hanging out with other people. And so yeah, it was pretty typical bachelor life. Spent a lot of time just doing stuff that I
Everybody loves this story.
So the story of how Amy and I met is really interesting. It's a great story, honestly.
Okay, so another fun fact about me, I am obsessed with podcasts. I've loved podcasts for years and years and years. And of course, because I'm a huge Disney fan, I got into specifically like Disney podcasts, where there definitely weren't that many of them when I first started listening. And the one that I found that I loved was a Disneyland-based podcast called Mousetalgia.
I have a friend, her name is Tiffany. Hi Tiffany, if you're watching. She told me about this podcast called Mousetalgia. She told me about this thing called Mousetalgia, and she said, there's this convention, because I was a big Disney fan, and a lot of my friends knew that, and they, I would always go down to Disneyland, and I would always go to Disney World with like my sister, and I went one time with some friends, but like mostly just with my sister and her husband and their 2 kids. Yeah, so like I had a huge love for just Disneyland and doing Disney stuff. And so, she knew that. And so Tiffany said, hey, there's this podcast called Mousetalgia. You should listen to them. It's all about Disneyland. And then she said, they have this event that they sponsor. It's actually in Linwood. It's like a Disney convention. And I was like, there's a Disney convention up here? Like, I want to go to this.
They were talking about every year for maybe a couple of years, they were talking about this event they went to in Washington State called the PNW Mouse Meet, or Pacific Northwest Mouse Meet. And every year since I heard about it, I really wanted to go because it sounded like so much fun. So what the PNW Mouse Meet is, it's an unofficial Disney fan convention, but it's where they fly in a lot of different guests, like Imagineers, really cool, really big people. Like last year they had Joe Rohde come out and speak. We didn't get to go, but anyway, so I really wanted to go, but I didn't have anybody to go with. Like either they just weren't interested in a convention, or they weren't Disney fans or anything like that, but something that I wanted to go as soon as I heard about it.
And so I remember, this is really funny. So I emailed my sister and my brother-in-law at the same time. I said, hey, there's this thing, and I found the website, and I said, there's this thing called the Pacific Northwest Mouse Meet. This tickets just went on sale. We should totally go to this. And my sister was like, yeah, like, let's totally do it. I'll buy us tickets. And so this was like probably March, and the event was in July. I think that's when the tickets went on sale. I could be wrong, but you know, rough timing. But we ended up, you know, waiting or whatever, and it was like probably a couple days before the event started. And I emailed the same email chain that I'd emailed before, like, hey, are we still set to go? Did you end up getting tickets? Because, you know, I never heard about it after that. But my sister is like, oh, you didn't get your ticket? Because I bought us tickets. And I was like, no, you said I'm going to buy us tickets together. And so she's like, oh no, I made a mistake. And I was like really disappointed, because I was like, well, do I get to go now? Like, what is the deal?
And so what happened is in 2012, December 2012, I finished with my master's. So I finished my master's. Things were getting a little bit easier teaching, but I was just getting this feeling in my heart after my master's. I felt like God was really telling me to get outside my comfort zone and to do something that I was afraid of. And one of the things that I'm afraid of most, and that gets me most uncomfortable, is any kind of social situation. If you invite me to a party, I will be crying beforehand, probably days. It will make me feel nauseous because I just get so nervous and so anxious about it. And so I just felt like I just felt like God was asking me to get outside my comfort zone. And specifically, I felt like I was a little bit too dependent on some of the friendships that I had, and I would just do whatever my friends were doing. And a lot, like, I liked it and things like that, but I just felt like I needed to do something on my own. And so on Mousetalgia, they let us know, hey, tickets are going on sale for the mouse meet. They sell out quick. So I just decided to buy a ticket for myself to go up to Washington during the summer. And a couple months before that, my mom was also really going, like, work was really intense with her and stuff like that. And so I talked to her and I said, Mom, let's make this a girl trip. Why don't you come with me? But I would go to myself for the mouse meet. So she would fly with me. We would have a couple of days like in Seattle, go hang out in Washington and those things. But then it would actually be, but I would still be able to go to myself. So that was it. So that's what ended up on happening.
And so she had emailed the guy who runs it. His name is Don. And she emailed him and said, you know, I messed up. My brother was supposed to get the ticket, but I didn't buy him one. It was total confusion. Do you have any extras? Because it was a sold out event. And he's like, you know what? 2 people just canceled, so I have an extra ticket for him. So I ended up getting a ticket, which was super fun. And so we went to the mouse meet, and it was a great time. We met Kevin Rafferty, who does Cars Land, or who is like the Imagineer behind Cars Land. Actually, a couple things, Rock and Roller Coaster, and he did Test Track. So he's, you know, pretty, oh, and yeah, the Cars ride. So it was really fun. He did a great presentation.
And I was really excited. So for the mouse meet, like, I made myself like a Haunted Mansion dress, and then I made myself a couple different outfits for different events for the days, like Disney themed, because I was hoping that they would maybe become like talking points, you know. And plus, like, if you know me, you know that like I love to my sewing. I really like it to like reflect how I'm feeling and things like that. So I made some outfits. And one cool thing that they do is that they had like a window decorating contest at the hotel. So there's a hotel that a lot of people, if you attend the mouse meet, you go to the Embassy Suites near the convention center, and they have the night before the PNW Mouse Meet convention, they have like different mixers, and then they have a decorating contest. I was a little bit too scared to really like do any of the mixing things, but I made like a tiki room theme window. I had my aunt who's like really talented, like paint a little sign for me, and I made like a tiki room dress and things like that. And then when the judges came by, like we had the music going, the tiki music going, and then I was able to do that. Then the next day was the actual mouse meet, and Mousetalgia has like a Christmas gift exchange, like a Christmas Secret Santa, and one of my Secret Santa was someone who was going to the mouse meet. So thankfully I was able to meet someone out at the mouse meet. So, and she was super nice, Kim, hi. And it was great. So I did have someone to go with me to the mouse meet event. It was so much fun. It was awesome.
Right before the last panel, they had anybody who stayed in the hotel nearby, which we didn't do that because we were living up there. They had like a window display thing, and they were giving away prizes for the people who had the best window display, and they called this girl up who had a tiki room dress on.
And they have the window decorating contest. I won one of the prizes, so I went up on stage and I got the prize, and it was just an awesome event.
So in the picture of her window display was a tiki room display, and she was standing in the picture with like a tiki room dress, and they called her name, and she was like, I remember her jumping up and being, oh my gosh, I won, and like was super excited. And immediately I was like, that girl's kind of cute. I was like, she looks, she's pretty cute. And so my sister, like, I remember she leaned over and she's like, that girl made her dress. And I was like, I don't sew, so that's cool. I guess that you would notice that. At the time, after the little giveaway thing, they had Goofy and the voices of Goofy and the voice of Donald. Like the people who've been doing Donald and Goofy for probably like 30 years. They had a panel with those two, and they just talked stories and stuff, and it was really cool. And so after that, my sister snuck off to get us a spot with the Goofy because we like Goofy. And so we went over, and lo and behold, look over, and there's the person that had just won and made her dress was sitting right there, standing next to us. And so my sister's like, hold on a second, I'm gonna go talk to this girl. And I was like, oh, you should go talk to that girl.
So I think I was in line for an autograph for the voice of Goofy. Someone just came and tapped me and said like, hey, did you make my dress? Or did you make your dress? And I was like, yeah, I did. She was like, oh cool, I like sewing too. I made my backpack. And so she showed her backpack, which was super cute and things like that.
And so she went over and they talked, and I don't know what they said because I was holding in line. And so then she came back over, and we got, you know, autographs and whatever it was. I forgot what we were just saying hi to the voice of Goofy. And so we then they have like a raffle at the end of the day. And so after we got our, you know, after we talked to him, we went over, and Amy and Stephanie continued to talk to each other. And so I had a feeling inside of me that I should probably mention, because Stephanie, my sister, kept mentioning her husband. And I was like, I don't want this girl to think that I'm married to my sister. And so I'm gonna say like, oh yeah, her husband's over there. His name is Joel.
We started talking a bit, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I started talking, and then she made mention of her husband, and then there was this person next to her, and I was talking, and I thought that was her husband. Turned out, no, it was her brother.
Is what I was like, I just don't want to make sure, you know that I'm not her husband. And so like, she's like, oh, okay, you know, it was one of those things. So I remember, it's a little bit hazy now, but I do remember during the raffle, we sat down and we were right next to each other and we talked pretty much for like 15 or 20 minutes before the raffle, and just kind of got to know. I was asking a lot of, like, she, you know, oh, you're from California, oh cool, you live near Disneyland, oh, you must go all the time, you know, that sort of small talk stuff. And so it was pretty cool. I really felt like, wow, this girl, she seems really nice and really cool, and she's interesting. And so I remember as, like, because the raffle was at the end of the day, and so then everybody sort of was leaving, and Stephanie had gotten her number, which is super weird because my sister doesn't do stuff like that. And so, and I know now that I know Amy, she doesn't do stuff like that either.
And so Stephanie and I exchanged phone numbers, and she invited me to dinner, which now that I know her is not something she usually does at all. We're actually pretty similar in feeling like anxious in social situations and those different things.
And so they swapped numbers, and so we decided like, hey, we're super hungry, let's go to the spaghetti factory. It's just down the street from the Linwood Convention Center. And so we drove down the street, and before we left, Stephanie had texted Amy like, hey, we're gonna go out to dinner, you want to come with us?
But she invited me to dinner, and at first I was like, no, I didn't want to go to dinner with them just because I was going to have dinner with my mom.
I remember inside of me when she said no first, I was so bummed because I was like, oh man, like I really thought there was like a connection growing between us, you know. It was one of those things. As we drove, probably within like not even 5 minutes, Stephanie's like, oh, Amy's gonna come with her mom.
But I just felt in my heart the little bit of, it must have been God kind of feeling like, hey, I thought you were going to try to do things out of your comfort zone, doing things that made you feel nervous. And honestly, going out to dinner with somebody, like, that's at least like a 45-minute, hour and a half commitment. We were going to the spaghetti factory, and so if they turned out to be like weirdos or awkward or something like that, I would just have to sit in awkwardness for that time, like if it didn't go well. So I was kind of running away from that potential feeling, but I just felt in my heart like, you know what, I did a really good job at the mouse meet. I was really like, I put myself out there, I wasn't afraid, and it turned out good. Like, I had a really good time. So I was like, I'm going to keep going with pushing myself and just taking a leap of faith, and I'm going to say yes. But my thing is I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to see if my mom could come and see if that would be weird. But they totally weren't. Stephanie wasn't when we were texting, and so we went over to the spaghetti factory and we were talking, and it was great. So it was Stephanie, her husband Joel, Erik, and everything was awesome. They were great.
And I was like, yes. And so I remember meeting them outside because I was so excited. I walked over and like waited. As soon as I saw them, I like went and opened the door. And like, I think Amy thought that I was leaving or something like that. I don't know, but I was just trying to be a gentleman, but I don't think she noticed, but that's fine. We had dinner and it was really fun. And like, I remember talking to her mom about her job and stuff like that. Oh, I'm sure we bored Amy to death with all that talk, but.
And the thing that made me like notice Erik, be like, oh, hey, you know, that kind of thing was he really, he was very kind and really paid a lot of attention to my mom, and he was asking a lot about things like, okay, sorry mom, her job is very boring. Like, it's very boring, and it's very like, I have to really like pay attention for it to not just sound like, you know, when I'm trying to like be supportive, you know, like I just have to really pay attention because it's just not my thing. But Erik was like asking like follow-up questions, and I just thought he was being so kind and nice to my mom, and that like that kindness and just his ability to put like not only myself but also my mom like at ease in that conversation, and just how good he was and how kind he was, like not to me but to my mom. And because like he didn't know her, you know, but just how I think it was his kindness that really made me start to look at him in a special way.
I thought it went like great dinner. Like nothing was ever awkward. It was just kind of fun to talk to him and get to know him. And so Amy, I was like trying to find Amy on Facebook as we were leaving, but then a friend request popped up in my thing, and I was like, yes, she found me. And so immediately I started to like asking her like, hey, where are you gonna go? What are you gonna do? Like, you know, you should go to I think I said go to Pike Place Market, you know, go see the Troll, because if you go to Seattle, go see the Troll. It's really cool under the 99 bridge. It's pretty cool up in Fremont. So just saying like you should go do all these things, and you know. So yeah, so that's how we met. We met at the mouse meet. It's really funny. I texted my friend, my best friend, his name is Brian. I texted him and I said, hey man, I just met my future wife. And his response was like, no you didn't. You know, it was just one of those funny things, but like I thought I was just kind of, it was mostly a joke. I didn't necessarily think it was true. It was just kind of funny, but yeah. So we friend requested and started chatting and that kind of stuff, and yeah, I really thought that we hit it off. So our first date, so leading up to our first date, some key important things that happened between us where, first of all, we talked a lot. We talked a lot going up into that. We Facebooked a bunch of times, and then we moved to text messaging, and then we moved to calling each other. And so it was kind of like one of those things where we were feeling each other out a little bit.
And then we soon found out that we were both Christians, and then which is definitely super important to both of us. Like, it honestly, if Eric and I didn't have that fundamental life like belief and trust and relationship with God, then we would have just been friends, you know.
But I remember the day after, or pretty much like as soon, we were talking on the phone and we both found out that we were Christians, which was awesome at the time. And so it's like it's really important to me and her. And so it was just one of those things that kind of came up naturally. And I was like, I was wondering about it because she had texted me something earlier the day before, whatever. And so I was kind of curious about it. But then when we talked about it, it was like, oh, that's just, cool, whatever. And so I remember as soon as I hung up the phone with her, I texted and was like, I think I have a crush on you. And she's like, I have a crush on you too. And so it was really funny. But I remember I screenshotted that and I was going to send it to my sister and be like, look what happened. But I sent it to her again. So I screenshotted the thing that we just said and then I sent it to her and she's like, what's this? And I was like, dang it, I did not mean to send that to you. But I covered it with like, so you'd remember it forever. It was one of those awkward things.
Yeah, it was great. Those first couple weeks we were texting all the time. I still remember like when you're in the beginning of a relationship and you are like, at least maybe it's just because we were long distance, we were like states away, but like, my gosh, I looked at that phone all of the time, like kept looking, and he was great at texting me and stuff like that, but it was so much fun.
But I remember like we both said we had to crush on each other, and from there we started talking a lot more, and I basically was like, hey, how about I come down next month and take you out on our on an official date and see how it goes and stuff like that. And so the whole month leading up to that was just like a lot of conversation, a lot of calling each other, a lot of texting. We called each other multiple times every day, and which was good because I feel like that was really important for our communication skills, which I can get into a little bit later. But so we flew. So I booked the tickets. We decided August 17th would be the Saturday, would be our first date. I remember I told her that I was gonna be flying on I think it was like a 3 o'clock flight or something, but I knew that I'd be there earlier because I wanted to surprise her by coming a little bit early. I remember I was really excited to go, and I was gonna go early and meet Amy's dad before she got home from work because I knew she was getting home around like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and so I wanted to be there waiting for her kind of as like a surprise. And so I found her house, and so I went up to the door and I rang the doorbell, and I was expecting her dad to open. Now that I know her dad, he was not home, which is not shocking. He was out running errands. And so what met me was a terrifying barking sound coming from behind the door where I thought I was gonna get murdered by a dog. And so I immediately stuck my tail between my legs, went back into the car, and just waited in the car for her to show up. And so I remember I called my friend and I was like, I'm so nervous. He's like, you're gonna be fine, it's fine. So she eventually showed up and she waved at me from the car because I think she recognized me, and she's like, oh. So after she got home, she let me in. The dog just was like super nice to me and became my good friend. And she just had kind of a really rough bark where you thought she was gonna murder things. But she was a sweetheart, so. The
night before, he got to meet my best friend at the time. So he came down on a Saturday, and our date was on the Saturday. He came down on a Friday, and we kind of had like mini golf and went out to dinner, just like hanging out with my friend at the time and her boyfriend.
So the next morning I woke up, I got barely any sleep that night because I was super nervous, and I drove and I picked her up and I gave her a flower, and we went to Disneyland. And I remember we walked in, and there's a picture that we were just recently recreated. That was like the first picture, that was like the first thing we did when we walked in. And I remember we took that picture and I immediately took her hand and I was like, let's go to breakfast.
So we went and we had breakfast at the Plaza Inn before before park opening, and it was beautiful. We were able to do I think our first ride together was Peter Pan.
First ride we went on was Peter Pan.
Yep, Eric says I'm right. I just remember, you know, just those sweet moments of like, I remember being on It's a Small World, and like we were like arm in arm, and I just remember like just lightly like rubbing his arms. And
I remember it not being super busy either, which was really interesting because it was the middle of August, and we went to both parks. We did a million things, you know. We hung out in the animation building for a while. We went and did the roller coaster, and she felt kind of weird afterwards, and so we went and talked, and it was really important because she told me a lot of things that I didn't know that much about her.
Alright, so something you might not know about me is I could definitely be a party pooper, and I have my my friend who I've been friends with since we were in first grade, Jordan. She told me that I have like a timer that no one knows when the timer goes off, but when the timer goes off, like I am done and I lose it, you know. And so because I'm a local to Disneyland, I really do not go for full days at Disneyland because it's just exhausting, and it's a lot. And so, but we were going the full day, and I was all very tired from the day before, and like just excitement, no sleep, you know, things like that. And so also rides are difficult for me, and I get really motion sick. So we went on the Incredicoaster 2 times in a row. I started feeling sick. It was hot and it was tired, and I lost it. Like, I had a meltdown on our first date because it was just too much and too overwhelming. And so Eric was like, not surprising now that we've been married for 5 years now, but he took great care of me. We sat down in the shade somewhere. He got me tons of water and things like that. And that actually ended up being really, really important to us because I was able to talk to him about someone who was really important to me. My cousin Amanda. I really do not talk about her a lot in general, just because she means so much to me. She passed away from cancer when I was in high school, and she was basically felt like my sister to me, and that had a really big impact. But I just don't, it's just not a part of me that I open up, and there's a lot more into this. So for some reason that just felt like the right time to open up, and I just wanted, like, because he was such a great guy, and so like I just wanted him to know all of me, and I wanted to know all of him, because the more and more I learned about him, the more and more I realized how amazing and how special he was.
You know, we talked about a lot of stuff that was super important, sort of like, hey, you know, just so you know what you're getting into with me. So that was, it was good. It was a great date, and you know, we were able to share ice cream, which was really cute, and then we went and stood in line for World of Color.
So I rallied, we had that conversation, then we ended up having a great rest of the night. We watched World of Color, and it was awesome.
I remember leaving and just being really happy and excited about life, and it was fun.
And then the next morning we went and kind of had like a beach day. We went down to Huntington Beach. We had breakfast at the Sugar Shack, which was so nice. And then I think it was that afternoon for lunch we went to Maggiano's, and he met my family. So he already met my parents, obviously, but then he met my brother and sister-in-law, and looking at everybody at the table, that's where I really felt like I really fell in love with him, because I just felt whole, you know, like I just felt so complete. I felt like so whole, and I just felt, because family is insanely important to me, like family, I just can't explain it. Family is so important to me, and just like seeing my family at the table and him being included just felt so right. Then we had our long distance relationship, and that was tough. Like, long distance is tough.
Like basically once a month, I think one of us would go, so it would be kind of alternated. She would come up, I would go down, that kind of thing. And so it was hard, but I felt like it was really good for us because it really helped with our communication with each other. Because I think if it wasn't for that, I don't know if we would have been good communicating. Because you have to be really intentional when you're in long distance like that about, you know, what you're trying to say. There's no games, like you're not playing around with people and stuff. You're just, you know, you're sticking to the points and like how you're feeling about things. And so I felt like that was really important for us because it helped us, you know, it helped us a lot. And so when it came time for us, when we were talking about being more serious and that kind of stuff and trying to figure out like, you know, what to do, we knew one of us had to move.
I was 25 at the time when we met and Erik was 30. We just felt really, really sure of our relationship, and we both kind of knew that we wanted it to move into the direction of marriage. And in order for our relationship to progress, we felt like that one of us should move. We prayed about it and we decided that I should move up to Washington, which at the time it was hard, but I don't think I realized how hard it would be.
You know, we decided, like, picked a day. You know, I helped her find a place to live with some girls from my church that I knew for a really long time, and she packed her stuff up. You know, I flew down on December 26th, flew down to LAX, met up with her parents. Her car was already packed, and we drove up to Washington. And I remember that was really tough on her.
Do not think I realized that at all. I've had different places where I've lived, but they always had to start and stop. It was
hard for her to live up in Washington, but at the same time I think she was excited about it because, you know, it meant to be with me and stuff. And so come March, I knew that at that point that we were probably going to get married, and so I really wanted to propose. And I'd had a pre-planned trip, I think even before I met Amy, about going with I tried to get a bunch of friends to go down to Disneyland together, and the only ones that could go were my friend Brian and his wife Miley. And so, which was fine, and it actually worked out because I was like, you know what, while we're down there I can propose.
So Erik had this trip planned with his friends, his best friend, and then his wife, Brian and Miley.
But yeah, so we went down to California and went to Disneyland. And I remember I came early with Brian and Miley, and so we came early because she had to finish out, it was basically right before spring break, and so she had to finish an extra day of work, and so she flew in the next day. And so we stayed here. Brian and Miley went to Six Flags, and I went to hang out with her dad for the day. And basically did the whole like asked permission to marry your daughter sort of conversations and stuff, and so, which was fine, it was great. He liked me, and so, you know, he's like, yeah, I'll let you marry, you know. I had to give him a couple of goats and a barn door, but you know, it worked out for me just fine.
But we were at Disneyland for a while hanging out with him, and then we had a DCA day.
We were at DCA, and the day before I had just gone with Brian and Miley because Amy just was hanging out with her parents. I walked over to DCA, went to the animation building, and straight up asked them, like, hey, I'm thinking about proposing here tomorrow. Do you have like an order that the songs go in so that I know which one to pick? And the guy brings out this book and he's like, here's the order. And so it had the order of all the songs, and if you're unfamiliar, it's a big room that has a lot of different animation stuff going, like the art of whatever the movie is, and they play the songs. And so like Pinocchio will come up, and you know, the Jungle Book and all that kind of stuff. And so I picked the song that Rapunzel and Flynn Rider sing, and the big romantic song. And I was like, this is the perfect song, I'm gonna do this one. And then I figured out, like, because they said there's not really a time, but it's like a 45-ish minute loop, so you just kind of have to time it right. So I knew the couple before that, so I could cue it up in my brain, like, okay. And so they were gonna go on Tower of Terror, and I was like, this is the perfect opportunity for me to go figure out where they are in their playlist, so I can either waste time or I can just do it before, you know, right away.
I think I went with Brian and Miley on Tower of Terror at California Adventure, and Erik didn't go for, I was like, for whatever reason, right? I didn't know why. But we just went, and then we came out, and then we were meeting him in the animation building. If you do not know, the animation building in DCA is my favorite place. I think it is beautiful. I like that it is dark. and I like that any noise can get drowned out by the beautiful Disney music. It's so good if you're feeling overwhelmed. I love it, love it, love it. And so then like I went and saw Erik, and then I was like chatting just because I was excited to see him. I felt like maybe we didn't get to talk as much as I wanted to about something before, so I was just like excited. And then he was like trying to tell me something, and I just kept on like talking.
And so I went and sat down, and I started, and I was like, yeah, this is too close, it's not gonna come. And so sure enough, basically like 5 minutes before she showed back up after the ride, the Tangled Sun already come and go, and I was like, dang it, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But then I thought, like, I know that she loves Aladdin, I know that she loves the song, and so I'm gonna do it then. And so I knew that it was coming up, and so they come back in after Tower of Terror, and they're really excited, and like Brian and Miley knew beforehand that I was gonna propose at that moment, and so they sort of like let Amy come over to me, and they kind of wandered off. And so Miley hid around the corner with her camera, and she was taking pictures of us. And so I sat down on the couch, and there was just the two of us almost this entire room by ourselves, which was awesome because that never happens. And so I'm sitting there, you know, I put my arm around her, and I tell her that I love her so much, and like I'm really excited about our relationship and where it's going. And she's like, oh, okay, whatever. Well, I'm going to talk about this other thing about, oh, we need to do this, this, and this today. And I was like, okay, yeah, well, you know, but let me get this out real quick. She just wouldn't stop talking. So finally I got down on my knee. I was like, you know, and she kind of stopped talking, and I was like, you know, I love you a lot, and I want to spend my life with you, you know, etc. And I asked her to marry me, and she was just like, ah, you know.
He proposed to a whole new world, which I thought was the most romantic song in the universe since I was a little kid. And he had the beautiful ring that I still wear that probably needs to be clean. It's probably blurry. But I was so happy, and we called everything, and Brian and Miley already knew, and Miley was taking all these pictures, which was so nice. But I have to say, I was just so happy. I have no idea what, all those sweet words are gone from my memory. Just the feeling of happiness and thankfulness is there. Wedding planning is hard.
So getting married to Amy was great. The lead up to it was a little bit stressful because when you're doing a wedding, there's a lot of planning that goes into it.
We had a pretty strict budget, but we ended up finding this place. I think it was like $700 or something like this.
We found a great deal. It was $500 to get the place that we got, and they let us have it the day before too, so we could set everything up.
For like a little community center up in Washington. And that was really hard deciding where our wedding was because we were couples, because we were from different states. And I come from a really big family and a really extended family, and Erik has a really good group of friends, and we knew that no matter what state we chose, that not everybody we wanted to come could come. We decided to have it in Washington, and I was totally fine with that because I lived in Washington at the time, and it would have made planning easier. I'm sure it was really hard on a lot of my family members and my friends and stuff like that, but it all ended up working out, and everybody was really supportive, which was awesome.
We decided to go with the Disney theme because why not? We met at a Disney convention, why not have a Disney wedding? And so with the help of my sister, who did a pretty amazing job, we created this amazing fairy tale-esque wedding.
Our wedding had a lot of DIY elements to it, and we had like, because we couldn't afford to have like a meal, so we had like a dessert bar, and I made a bunch of different cookies, and these cookies were from, the recipes were ones that Erik loved from his best friend's mom. And then there were we had like an ice cream bar with like Sub-Zero ice cream, you know, the ice cream that with like liquid nitrogen and things like that.
So we had to really do a lot of work for the wedding. We made our invitations, and like my sister did a lot of help with this stuff, and it was just a lot to plan. And so but it was worth it to me because we had a great wedding.
And Erik did the playlist, and then there was like, it just ended up being super fun, and there were so many DIY elements to it that I loved and I appreciated, because like for me, if someone makes something with their brains, or if they make something with their hands, it means so much. It means so much, you know. It's more than what money can buy, because it's their talent, it's their effort. Like, I feel like if somebody makes something for you or does something for you, you see their heart in that. And so so one of the things was that my mom ended up helping, like, was for like our party favors. We had these like IKEA like little apple cider cups or whatever. What? Flutes?
Champagne flutes.
Oh, they're champagne flutes, but we use the sparkling apple cider, and like she like etched like Mickey Mouse head in it and stuff like that. And so our wedding was awesome and perfect, and I was really, really happy. Also hungry at the end.
Yeah, we had a great wedding. She's a great girl to marry.
Thankful to God that I get to be Mrs. Goninan.
Thanks guys for watching our love story. This is a completely different video from normal, but that's fine. I really wanted to put something together to kind of explain, because I feel like we do have a pretty unique story for us, and so I really wanted to dig deep and do something fun. So thanks for watching. We'll probably go back to regular scheduled program, but today is our anniversary, our 5th year wedding anniversary, and so we really wanted to celebrate it in a special way. And so we appreciate the support you guys have been giving us. It means a lot. The next 5 years is dedicated to a lot of health things and you know, that sort of stuff with the business, and so we're excited and have a lot of hope.
Lots more growth in a lot of different areas is going to happen.
Yeah, not so much growth here.
I know, not.
It's growth in the opposite direction. So, but we appreciate you guys watching and being with us. And so, if you liked the video, give us a thumbs up. If you're new, hit the subscribe, and we really appreciate the support. And we're really thankful that you guys tune in to us. So,
yes, thank you for watching.
Yep. We'll see you next time.